down 56% in 2022. Is AMD stock a buy for 2023? I'm going to answer that question in this video, so stay tuned. The first thing I'm going to look at is AMD's revenue growth quarterly going back several years all the way before 2014, and you're going to see two things here that I want to point out. First is the exponential growth over the years between 2014 and I want to say to the beginning of 2022. You could see a very nice upward trajectory growth, especially after the pandemic, the onset of the pandemic in 2020. Look at that growth. It tripled from less than 2 billion to over 6 billion. That was a massive increase, and of course this was due to the fact that one, the governments worldwide sent out stimulus checks, and that fueled a lot of consumer spending to buy computers, to buy graphic processing units. That created a surge. That was one reason. Number two, people were working from home now, and so they weren't necessarily using the computer at work, so now they needed to create a home office. So that was another reason sales for AMD's devices boomed. And third, AMD's devices, graphic processing units, and CPUs for that matter, were used in mining cryptocurrencies. So when cryptocurrency prices soared in 2020 and 2021, that created another reason for its GPUs and CPUs to skyrocket in sales. However, all of those three reasons I mentioned are now a headwind for AMD going forward. Cryptocurrency prices are crashing. Once people build their home office, they're not going to need to update those computers for several years, right? Once you buy a computer, you don't update that. You don't buy a new computer every year or even every 2 years or every 3 years. You try to use your computer 4, 5, 6 years. These are long-lasting electronics, so you're not going to be replacing them very frequently. And then people are also now returning to their offices, working back, less work being done remotely, more work back in the office nowadays. So people that built out those home offices, some of them are saying, hey, I don't need this. I don't necessarily need this laptop that I use for work at home. Let me go put it on Facebook Marketplace or on eBay and sell it. Let me recoup some money. Let me help to help pay for some of the other things I need to spend money on. So the secondary market is getting flooded with AMD, with devices that with electronics that contain AMD graphic processing units and CPUs. So the existing channel inventory is way, way, way elevated, and so AMD is reducing what it sells to its partners, and that's causing revenue to decline. This is likely to persist for several quarters. This is not good news for AMD stock investors. The next thing I want to look at is its operating income, and a similar very excellent trajectory longer term, steadily rising operating profits that are pressured in the near term as sales are falling. Its operating income turned negative to negative 64 million in its most recent quarter. Operating income is probably going to be pressured as well over the next several quarters. And lastly, not lastly actually, one of the last metrics I'll look at is cash flow from operations. Again, very nice healthy upward trend. That's getting pressured in the near term as sales are getting pressured as well. And that's going to be the case for AMD. If you're thinking about investing in AMD stock, it's going to be difficult over the next few quarters. Longer term, the company has excellent prospects, right? Consumer electronics are only going to sales of graphic processing units and CPUs are only going to grow over the longer term, more so the GPUs than the CPUs. But the industry demand for those products are probably going to grow double digits over the next 10 years, even though in the next few quarters it might be pressured. So finally, let's look at valuation. And for AMD, I wanted to look at a few different things. I wanted to look at price to earnings ratio, both in the trailing 12 months and also for its price to earnings ratio on a forward-looking basis, because like I mentioned earlier, its prospects in the near term are pressured and challenging. So I want to see what the forward earnings are, what the price is compared to the forward earnings as well as the trailing earnings. And then I wanted to look at price to free cash flow. And the trailing PE of 37.86 is not cheap. It's not cheap at all. And the price to free cash flow of 27 is it's okay. It's still not cheap. It's also not expensive. The forward PE of 18 is about the average for the S&P 500 historically. It's right around the average PE ratio, and especially if you consider that AMD is going to be a growth stock over the next decade, then you're getting a pretty good price in terms of the PE ratio if you're thinking about the next 5 years and you're not just thinking about the next 2 or 3 quarters. All right, so to answer the question, is AMD stock a buy for 2023? I'm going to say it's on the borderline. It's right on the borderline. And if you were to ask me at the end of the first quarter of 2023 or at the end of the second quarter of 2023, my answer would probably be yes, it's a good time to buy the stock then. But right now, with all of the uncertainty regarding the elevated level of inventories in GPUs and CPUs, I would not recommend taking on the risk of buying AMD stock right now. So it's right on the borderline, but I'm going to say to wait before buying AMD stock. Of course, I recommended AMD stock if you were comparing it to NVIDIA. AMD is the better one to buy, but if you could wait, I would recommend waiting before buying AMD stock altogether. All right, that's all I've got for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.